Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel where today we are starting our VaatiVidya Dark Souls 3 lore reactions for the Ringed City DLC. This is going to be very exciting. I'm super keen to see what Vaati has to say about the Ringed City specifically and how it's going to tie into the rest of the game. We just recently did the video on the Ariandel DLC altogether, so let's jump into the Ringed City now. There's 2 parts and also a couple of other videos related to the Ringed City. We'll start with this one and see what he has to say, so let's get started. Oh wow, it like starts with Gael almost. Crazy.
The Red Hood is come to eat us.
Gael's come to eat us.
Souls.
Trademark.
At the very end of the world, the final battle begins.
It starts with the final battle. What?
Who persisted since the age of the gods, and unkindled ash, born of the cycle itself. And in the ruins of countless civilizations, their fight spills the blood of the Dark Soul, from which a new world can be born.
Insane.
The Ringed City DLC, even though it lacks a flashy ending cutscene, ends the Souls series in a beautiful way. For it's fitting that only at the end of the world would we finally understand how it all began. In the Age of Ancients, 4 souls were found by creatures that crept from the dark. 4 Lord Souls that would shape the world. Of course, these souls were shared, for a lord requires subjects, so Gwyn had his royalty, the witch had her daughters, Nito had his dead, and the pygmy, who found the Dark Soul, fathered humanity. And we always assumed that there was only one pygmy. Indeed, there is only one furtive pygmy shown in the trailer, and only one pygmy referenced as our ancestor. And while it fits best that this might have been Manus, who went insane in Oolacile, the furtive pygmy's identity was never really important.
It was just the friends that we made along the way.
Furtive. Whoever they were, whoever they became, they did not seek a name. They did not seek trouble, and they certainly did not seek the light. For without light, there are no shadows.
Furtive Pygmy is such a bizarre and interesting part of like the whole Lord Soul dynamic from Dark Souls 1.
In the Ringed City. And in the Ringed City, we find the first evidence of early man, descendants of pygmies with armaments forged in the fires of the abyss.
Such a good armor set too, that's so sick.
The Ringed Knights, by command of the gods, stood amongst the ranks who set out to slay the ancient dragons. Clearly they each returned with the head of an archdragon as their prize, yet their contributions in the war were never lauded. Perhaps you can guess why.
The former King of Light, he feared humans.
Oh wow, Dark Souls 2.
Age of Dark.
Okay.
As Gwyn, it was one thing to have fought for a new age of fire, but it was another experience entirely to feel this fear of losing it.
I really like Vaati's ability to pull from like Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 2 occasionally. Like when he's talking about like a specific thing in a Dark Souls game, he will be able to recall specific scenes or dialogue or like lore notes from like previous games that like have that little interconnectivity. And I love that he can just like, we're talking about this, but here's like this NPC conversation from Dark Souls 2 that also ties into it and stuff, because it's so cool, like the games have loose connective tissue, but you can glean even more from that, and I just love how he includes that in there. Like the effort is always so appreciative, because he doesn't just go, oh yeah, this is Dark Souls 3, we only talk about Dark Souls 3 stuff. His ability to enhance his lore reactions with stuff from the previous games is awesome.
This fear brought out the worst in him. Humanity had aided him in this great war against the dragons, and yet it was foreshadowed that his age of fire would eventually fade into an age of dark. So, patiently, the humans waited their turn, and in dire fear of this, Gwyn sealed his fate. Literally. A ring of fire was placed upon the armor and weaponry of early men, and their true darkness was lost forever. And one day, the dark side would appear upon man's very flesh, a seal of fire surrounding the darkness of humanity, a brand that burns away the very soul of a human until only a hollow is left. And eons later, the very world...
Oh, that was such a cool transition, dude.
An endless age of fire. This marked a terrible event in human history.
This, like, music and this dialogue and the editing and transitions is actually so cool.
An event that may well have changed man's very nature.
The dark side.
Sin.
Oh, and then he brings in, oh dear, Scholar of the First Sin to...
All stemmed from humanity, and men assumed a fleeting form. These are the roots of our world. Men are props in states of life, and no matter how tender, how exquisite, a lie will remain a lie.
Thanks, Odia.
Some humans remained faithful to the gods of the Age of Fire, and they rejected this darkness deep within them. Some took pride in their newfound undeath, reveling in what it truly meant to be branded. And eventually, a new creature would even be born, the Unkindled, born from the ashes of undead who sacrificed themselves to the flame long ago.
If thou art yet human, the urge will soon begin to swell, to curse the gods and bring ruin upon this accursed heap of dung.
And one day, some pygmies whisper, this curse placed upon the abyss will eventually take the gods themselves.
The abyss is cursed, take the gods.
After he conquered the archdragons, Lord Gwyn made a habit of bestowing gifts upon those who had aided him in his war. To Seath, for example, he awarded dukedom, and bequeathed onto him a shard of a great soul, and embraced him as a part of the royal family.
That he
To the
did.
four kings also were fragments of a great soul bequeathed, for Gwyn recognized their foresight. And to the pygmies, the great lord granted sovereignty over the ringed city, an isolated place at world's end for them to live in peace. However, of all the gifts he gave, this one appears to betray his prejudice towards the holders of the dark soul, for when we visit, it's common knowledge that the ringed city was not so much a home as it was a prison.
The forsaken ringed city was walled off by the gods to contain the pigmies. And the dark soul is better left well alone.
So wild.
At the heart of the ringed city lies Gwyn's youngest daughter, locked in an endless slumber. The Princess Filianore.
Her slumber is a deceit, a lid covering an overgrown privy, a prop to keep thee from the dark soul of thine desire.
Somehow, this slumbering princess, and/or the egg that she holds, protects the pygmy royalty, hides their dark souls, and perhaps even forestalls the end of the world.
The egg is hatched.
Well, we'll get to that in a video analyzing the princess and her roots in the movie Angel's Egg, so subscribe if you're interested in that. But ignore the hows for now, and simply accept that she has this power,
really interesting,
evidenced by the pygmies that we find when we crush the egg and break through time. As you can imagine, the ringed city revolved almost entirely around the defense of this princess, a fact that's made abundantly clear to you as soon as you enter. These ruined knights were once like you, journeying through the ringed city so that they could find the legendary Dark Soul. They were sent here on an old king's orders, but they were so
The
sound
ruined sentinel helmet.
they had little choice but to swear themselves to the Judicator Giant, this judge capable of enslaving the spirits of those who would threaten the city. This enslaving of those who would threaten you allowed the city's defenses to grow significantly over time.
Dude is so annoying.
king's decree. None may disturb our mistress's slumber.
Fuck, man, this is so good.
Argo watches over the spears of the church, an order devoted to the defense.
Ah, yes. What a cool boss
The
fight.
last recorded member to join was named Halflight, who was a missionary on a visit to the Ringed City, who elected to stay behind. Halflight, wielding the white birch bow, a relic of Oolacile, surely hailed from the ancient land of light sorceries, and considering the Ringed City accepted this mission from Oolacile, the two cities must have once had some sort of alliance. And you two can stand alongside him as a spear of the church.
Thou'st a divine spear become, an honour once bestowed in the time of the gods, nearly unheard of in this age of waning fire.
Ooh, can we actually...
As a servant of the princess,
Oh, wow.
I am honoured to have met thee.
Wow.
This is Shira.
What a cool
Woman of many
touch.
titles, daughter of the Duke, descendant of the gods, matriarch of the church, friend to Medea, a dragon-slaying knightess, and handmaiden to Princess Filianore. In no small way,
What a cool looking weapon, too.
is the last living representative of the old gods. This place we find her is called the Dark Room, where she will always remain, for she took it upon herself to imprison herself here to watch over the undying corpse of a pygmy king. Long ago, a mad king was born to the pygmy royalty of the Ringed City, and Shira put him to rest, impaling the king upon her cross spear.
Like a badass.
Cross spears were for killing dragons, and her weapon was not suited to kill the king. And so, forever entwined, she took it upon herself as an eternal duty to deliver both the spear and the king to the Dark Room, where she would hold them close until the end of time. This is proof that even primeval humanity may well have been starting to cause problems, going wild, as we know it is wont to do.
Is that...
Darkness was starting to wear upon the Ringed City, its inhabitants.
There's a humanity
Even its most
in the Ring City somewhere? Or is this just camouflage? Oh yeah, this is just camouflage.
descendant
I was like, what the
of
fuck?
dragons was raised by the gods,
Chameleon, I think.
and since he was immortal, it made him the perfect creature to be tasked with this eternal duty
Hello, Medea.
and watch over the sleeping princess until the end of time. But as the city sank into the abyss, so too did Medea, only finding release at the hands of Shira and an unkindled.
Many of us are by the fire.
Flashbacks to when I
I speak of thine
thought that was it
and mine.
before the actual proper boss fight.
From the abyssal swamp, some claiming to have been around since the beginning, not unlike humans.
Oh no, thank you.
representing
I hate
little more
them.
than a hunger, presumably
The tiny ones, though.
reduce the world to nothing.
Fear not the dark, my friend, and let the feast begin.
And so, at the heart of the Ringed City, we are meant to question whether the abyss is inherently bad. For there have been many references throughout the series of a calm and gentle dark, but so many also of an abyss gone wild.
And so, she lived in fear of the dark, of the things that gnawed at her flesh. And yet, the abyss hath yet to produce any such creature.
The locust preacher posits that the abyss was never a threat, or at least that it never was in the beginning. Perhaps it is the seal of fire that casts the shadows, sending the dark into a frenzy. But of all the characters to trust, can we really trust the locusts? According to their right arm, the white-faced locusts were meant to beckon men to the dark with their sermons, and since they spin the abyss in such a positive
Yeah, they're just
way,
preaching, hey, what's up? Join the dark side, it's pretty cool, yeah?
to fear the dark. Was he right to mistrust humanity, to brand them, to shepherd them, to wall off the pygmies and contain the dark soul? The answer probably lies somewhere in the middle. Yes, the yearning of humanity often turns them into monsters, but any hope of a calm and gentle darkness may well have been lost when Gwyn marked them with the dark sign. And while the ringed city has revealed that the seal of fire was indeed Gwyn's doing, the nature of undeath is still a mystery that we have to figure out. For in Dark Souls 3 also, remember, are dark sigils, holes untouched by fire that seep humanity, and may also be responsible for the problems of humanity.
There is more dark within you than even you know. Dark is the mother of all. All things were born from it.
So, we'll get to what exactly cursed humanity with undeath in another video. But the fact remains, hope exists in an undead man
Gael!
who has endured since the age of the gods. Gael. In part 2 of this video, we'll
Awesome.
explore Gael's character now that we're armed with the knowledge of the ringed city and the origins of humanity. So click here for this video if it's out, subscribe if it isn't, and I'll see you very soon.
That's cool. He hasn't... I'm wondering if he'll touch on Medea a bit more as the Abyss Dragon, and also recognizing the direct continuation of a DLC, which in the Ariandel videos he was talking about, DLC's never really been like linked before, or like a direct continuation. So let's push on into the story of the Ringed City Part 2, which will move into Gael, and then there's also Angel's Egg and Filianore, which you mentioned, and then the minor characters of the Ringed City as well. So Part 2.
Once, there was an abomination who had no place in this world, a dragon crossbreed, feared by the gods, and described as an antithesis to all life. Clutching a strange doll, and truly alone, eventually this pale, white-haired girl was drawn into a cold and lonely painted world. And much later, perhaps within many layers of these painted worlds, a scaled, snake-eyed young girl becomes the last hope for humanity. We've talked at length already about the paintings, but it bears repeating. Basically, they're self-contained universes that exist within themselves, and from what we can gather, the original in the overworld is the painted world of Ariamis in Londor, which is protected by the painting guardians. And as any painting does, really, these paintings reflect the themes of the outside world, with a cycle of death and rebirth, just like our world. So, inevitably, just like the flame will fade, a painting will become rotten, and when this happens, the residents make the decision to set their world aflame, then escaping into yet another painted world as their world burns behind them.
The concept of the concept of a painted world is insane.
I cannot die.
I was just like, what the fuck? Why are you killing her?
Paint.
Wow.
Painter has no name, so we've taken to calling her Aria, and to paint a new world, she must see flame.
Just love the concept of let's paint,
Fire.
and then let's jump to a new world.
Those absorbed by fire must not paint a world. Don't worry. I haven't forgotten, Mother.
You reckon we're going to see a painted world in Elden Ring?
Her mother was once shown flame. Aria, too, must have an awareness of it. So, in our fight with another unkindled, Frida, the friction of our clash sets the world aflame. Yet Aria is left wanting for one more thing.
Ashen One, thy gift of flame has taken root, and Uncle Gael will soon bring the pigment. Pigment, coloured like
out
the dark
comes-
soul of
Out
man.
comes the blood.
Since the dark soul of man has never been retrieved from the ringed city, it follows that a painting with this dark soul as the pigment will be different than the paintings before it.
I wish to paint a picture of a cold, dark, and very gentle place. Soon, Uncle Gael will bring me the pigment.
Gael. When we first met Gael in Ariandel, we didn't really think too much of him. He's a soft-spoken, reverent man in undying service to his lady of the painting. And in many ways, Gael isn't supposed to be much more than just a simple undead, at the core of what being undead really represents. However, saying that, His 2 item descriptions back then, they revealed an unusually staggering depth to his history, because Gael has been around for a long time. He alone recalls the Way of White Corona miracle, which was
a very long time,
lost to the ages. For long ago, when the gods still had their imprint left upon the world, in Dark Souls 1, reciting any of their miracles would conjure up these white discs. And back then, apparently, also, were these slave knights, an order that Gael was a part of. And Gael's slave knight armor, embellished with this red cloth, was once a symbol of honor. But in stark contrast to this honor, slave knights had a terrible duty. They were used as fodder in the bleakest of battles. Imagine they were the knights that were sent first to tire out the enemy, because, after all, they couldn't die. And so we know that at least one slave knight outlived his masters, for while the slave knights were never relieved from duty, Gael did eventually find refuge in the Painted World, which leads us to believe that whatever entity they served, the slave knights outlived them, able to go mad, but unable to die.
My lady lives in the cold land of Ariandel. I need you to show her flame. A proper flame that will burn the rot away.
And so, this ancient, old undead found a new purpose, one that he believed in wholeheartedly. First, to save his painted world from the tyranny of Frida, and then to help his lady create a new world, this one painted with the dark soul of legend.
Oh, that's such a cool
if there's
touch.
only one positive attribute to take from the dark soul, it would probably be immortality, and perhaps this will be a painting that does not rot. But it is impossible to know exactly what kind of world will be painted with the dark soul, but I do have faith in the good of this ending, validated by one thing, Gael's character, because until the very end of time, Gael fights for this new world. He weathers countless battles, he even knows that a terrible fate awaits him. And this is a man that's been around since the Age of Fire. What other character in the series can lay claim to the knowledge that represents? So given that he has the right to knowledge of the Dark Soul more than most characters...
Vaati cosplaying as characters and including them in scenes just elevates these videos so much higher.
Paint.
It's so good.
Uncle Gael, I would.
And that he expects us to be thankful in the end.
You will thank me when it's done.
You can conclude that his quest to find the Dark Soul is a noble one.
If it is the dark soul thou desirest, then seek Filianore's church at the base of the cliff. There wilt thou the sleeping princess waken. Her slumber is a deceit, a lid covering an overgrown privy, a prop to keep thee from the dark soul of thine desire.
Upon her awakening, I expect Filianore fully believed that she would see the face of her father staring back at her.
Wrong.
And unkindled wakes her from her slumber, and in a flash of light, we are transported to an apocalyptic scene, the end of the world.
Dude,
What exactly
it's so crazy.
in this cutscene is very worthy of debate. Some people believe that the entire city was an illusion, and that Filianore's faith simply kept it in check, somewhat like how Gwyn kept the sun shining in Anor Londo.
It's very similar.
Another theory is that this flash of light takes us forward in time to the very end. Light, after all, is time.
The true ending of Dark Souls as a series, all the way to the end of time.
I think we are the only one to experience this rapid skip forward. Let me explain that. So, everyone else here, Gael, the Pygmy Lords, Filianore, Shira, it's likely they fully experienced every inexorable second of time scraping by until this point where Filianore finally dies.
Yeah, this is what I believe as well.
Filianore, help me.
Everyone's just been, like, painfully living this existence. Gael's been doing this the whole time.
Our dark soul.
We just a time-traveling boy coming to get a dark soul.
Characters. For example, the Pygmy Lords knew that Gael was searching for them. They knew long enough that he earned the terrifying mantle of the Red Hood, the Red Hood is come to eat us. Rumors like that don't just appear in one flash of light. Also, Gael's weaponry is a testament to time passing. His blade is broken and chipped, and his crossbow is stained and twisted. They weren't like that before. And Gael himself, on some level, is surprised to see that you still exist in this world.
He's beefed up.
Still here.
Shira, however, has been looking for you.
I've searched for thee, dark, stricken creature. I am Shira, daughter of the Duke, descendant of gods, and trusted friend to Medea. At once, I am the honor of the gods, the glory of fire, and the fear of the dark. Thou shalt not go unpunished.
How good is that dialogue, though?
Thy profanity and thy shameless yearning.
Writing the dialogue for a Souls game,
The world.
it seems like such a fucking cool time. You get to write all of these badass lines.
Treachery, profanity, and yearning. So, assumedly, our treachery could be our
I think some of my favorite lore and dialogue in the game is tied to battle-related dialogue now. I love it when our enemies talk while we're in battle with them. It's just so engaging.
Ever forgive thy lowly kind.
Even till the end of time, she never left that dark room, unaware or uncaring that only a few dunes away, the pygmy lords are being devoured alive. By Gael, the final antagonist of the Dark Souls series. I see a lot of people complaining that for a final boss, we don't hear a single word about this character until the DLC of Dark Souls 3. But then, is that really so strange? As we mentioned before, Gael is much like us. He's a simple undead, characterized by an uncrushable resolve.
Hand it over, that thing, your dark soul,
He said the thing.
for my lady's painting.
The red-hooded, wandering slave knight Gael sought the blood of the dark soul as pigment for the painted world. But Gael knew that he was no champion, that the dark soul would likely ruin him, and that he had little hope of a safe return. So why do you think he led you here? To kill him, perhaps? The revelation here is that a soul can exist in the blood, which is something that shouldn't be too surprising.
I loved this fight
After all,
so much,
Ariandel
dude.
flayed himself to satiate a flame within a lord vessel with his blood. Those that feast upon human flesh, so rats in Dark Souls 1 for example, they've always dropped humanity, which is a fragment of the soul. And a hollow without blood struggles to be reanimated. Now, we learnt this in the cathedral. And the Abyss Watchers also shared the soul of the Wolf-Blood Master between them. And in much the same way, the blood of the Dark Soul courses through the pygmies' veins, yet they've existed for so damn long that their blood has long since dried. The painter needs this blood to paint her world.
Second phase, baby!
Dried blood. Well, one way is to consume it, to digest it, and make the blood your own.
The Dark Soul.
Is this the blood? The blood of the dark soul.
Inflicted by the
Watching this cutscene is so exciting.
insanity that took Artorias. On some level,
This dude is insane.
holding true to his purpose, even now, he wonders aloud whether he's succeeded in digesting the Dark Soul. And when he sees us,
Yeah,
he
he uses the Corona spell,
sees more blood.
but like a badass version of it.
Sword in hand,
Destructo
Gale
Disc!
represents more than just a part of the first DLC. Instead, he exists as a true counterpart to the Soul of Cinder. He is the desire of humanity, fighting for a place in the world. He is the frenzy of the Dark Soul. He is a Hollow's loss of self, and he is the souls of countless others that he's consumed in his journey.
Absolutely insane fight. And I like this for an ending to Dark Souls 3.
Gale died as he lived, as a slave knight, intended for sacrifice. And in the end, whether he guided us here to kill him or not, Gale's final accomplishment was consuming the Dark Soul, digesting it and bleeding it out, making the Dark Soul as whole as it's ever been since the very dawn of time.
My thanks, Ashen One. With this will I paint a world. Please tell me thy name. I would name this painting after thee. I see. We are much alike. Then I will name this painting Ash. 'Twill be a cold, dark, and very gentle place. And one day, it will make someone a goodly home. I wonder when Uncle Gael intends his return.
Sad.
I hope the new painting will be to him a gentle home.
And so, the little universe is painted within a dying world. A cold, dark, and gentle place, like the paintings before it, except this new world has the ineffable Dark Soul painted into its very fabric. And even when the outside world expires, whether the fire fades, whether it's usurped by a Lord of Hollows or an accursed undead, somewhere within the painted world of Ariamis, hidden within the painted world of Ariandel, tucked away in a small attic, surrounded by a burning world, is a new sanctuary named Ash. Maybe one day we'll see what this cold, dark, gentle world is like. Miyazaki hasn't completely ruled out Dark Souls 4, so I do feel like it'll be made one day. But for now, and for the foreseeable future, really, as you should have expected from Dark Souls, the ending you envision in this new world is all your own, built upon the excellence of your imagination. I know you still have questions, so do I. Soon, we'll talk about the layers of time in the Ringed City, the difference between Dark Sigils and the Dark Sign, the statues of the primordial serpents, and the stories of the locusts. This may be the end for now.
But one day, tiny flames will dance across the darkness.
I'll see you then.
Interesting. It doesn't talk about Medea. I wonder if that maybe at this point in time, then he might not have. He didn't really show much Medea stuff, so I guess we might get more details on that in these next couple of videos. But I expected a bit more of a expansion on Medea as well. But there's definitely that Gael focus, which is obviously the core part of the Ring City. So cool as well. Such a insanely challenging but rewarding DLC. Do you guys want a Dark Souls 4? Do you think a Dark Souls 4 is appropriate? I think there is certainly a situation where we could see Dark Souls 4 exist or like come to fruition. I mean, Dark Souls is all about the cyclical nature of fire and dark, and there's certainly a way that they could still give us another story. I'd be down for a Dark Souls 4. Well, I mean, we'll have to see what Elden Ring turns out to be, won't we? And then we'll see. But we've got a couple of other videos to watch for Ring City Story. So we're going to jump in now and see details about Filianore, which is exciting. Spoilers for the movie Angel's Egg.
At World's End, a young woman clutches an egg. fully devoted to protecting whatever's inside. Alas, she's approached by a warrior who crushes the egg, shattering all of the illusions that it represented. I could just as easily be talking about Dark Souls 3 with that statement. Fact is, Miyazaki has a long-standing tradition of pulling quite heavily from other forms of media, and just like learning about Artorias from Guts, just like learning about Bloodborne from H.P. Lovecraft, I want Angel's Egg to teach us about Filianore, and I will answer the following questions. 1. What does the egg represent? And 2. How does Filianore have the power to forestall the end of the world? And make no mistake, that's exactly what she's doing. These questions aren't really touched upon in the game at all, not in any descriptions, and you'd think that they would be. But Angel's Egg, this animated movie made by Mamoru Oshii in 1985, succinctly answers both of these questions, and the answer is faith.
I absolutely love 80s and early 90s animation, by the way. It's so good.
With water. She knows not why she does this, yet she does it all the same. And in much the same way, she carries and protects this large egg, holding it closely throughout the movie. And long story short, you should watch the movie if you're interested. One of the very few pieces of dialogue in this movie talks about a bird that represents life outside of this world, and the girl believes that the bird now resides inside of the egg.
その卵の中には何が入ってるのかな。
そんなこと教えられないわ。だって私、あなたを知らないもの。
卵は割ってみなければ、その中に何が入っているのかわからないものだ。
This character, the warrior, wishes to break the egg and know one way or another what's inside, but the girl believes it will hatch. And the point I want to make is this: blind faith offers this great deal of power, because believing something will hatch from the egg, many would say, is better than knowing one way or another, for there may well be nothing inside the egg, or whatever's inside might have already died. So, compared to the grim, skeptical warrior, the girl is comforted by her faith, and she moves with purpose. She's protected by faith.
何か聞こえるかい？
小さな息をする音。
それは君の胸の音だよ。
羽の音も。きっと空を飛ぶ夢を見てるのね。
それは外の風の音だよ。
The end result of analyzing Angel's Egg in this way is that we can now reliably ascribe faith to Filianore's character, and that's very important because in Dark Souls, faith has a remarkable amount of power. I mean, think about it. When you learn a miracle in this game, what you're actually doing from a lore perspective is learning how to recite the words of a famous miracle, the mere act of which can heal wounds, emit force, cast lightning, and many other things.
Miracles began as tales told by gods, passed down through us since the first flame. Isn't it extraordinary to think they've existed since the very origins of the world?
Furthermore, true faith is blind. That much is obvious, and it's at the very core of faith. But in Dark Souls 3 it takes that a little bit further, because not only do miracles require faith, it just so happens that being blind enhances their power. Remember, all tomes in Dark Souls 3 are actually in Braille.
That is true.
Language of physical bumps for the blind to be able to read. A practice in Dark Souls 3 that is informed from the tradition of placing, and I quote, great faith in the words of the blind. So not only is Filianore a blind woman of faith, she's also the daughter of Gwyn, and she doesn't need to recite no simple miracle. It's likely that she is the miracle. This legendary character, a direct descendant of what could only be called a god, is something you tell tales about. So, she has power, we know that much, but what is this power being put towards? I think there is only really one possible answer, which is this: Filianore prevents time from passing. We know this because disturbing her doesn't just dispel a simple illusion, it actually brings us forward in time to the Ringed City, which has fallen to ash, to Gael, with his rusted and broken weapons in hand, to the pygmy lords, the blood of the dark soul dried in their veins, and back to Filianore, dead and withered, perhaps at the moment where her faith or her power finally gave out. So we've done our best to establish the power by which Filianore holds back time. But what is she manipulating? What does she have control over with this power? Well, it's possible that she's manipulating light, because light equals time.
That is true.
To the repair sorcery, which assumedly uses light to reverse time upon your weapons, the foundations of this spell are a well-guarded secret.
That's so cool.
Light is time, and the reversal of its effects is a forbidden art. If Filianore is indeed manipulating light to keep the ringed city locked in time, then you can kind of understand why this magic would be both forbidden and a well-guarded secret. The gods would not want this power nor this secret being used elsewhere. Light sorceries, like Repair, which we just mentioned, hail from the lost land of Oolacile, which must have existed when the ringed city was still in its prime, because the two cities are connected by two characters who appear to have moved from one to the other. Two characters, Half-Light and Manus. Let's talk about Half-Light. A missionary is someone who is sent on a religious mission, and Half-Light was one such missionary sent from an ancient land of sorcery, which was obviously Oolacile. But he elected to stay behind in the ringed city, becoming the last recorded spear of the church. So, this must have been before the two cities encountered hardship, and the two cities, when we visit them anyway, definitely are overrun. As for the second character linking the two places together, I want to convince you that Manus is at least a pygmy.
I want to convince you, he says.
The furtive pygmy.
Okay.
From the ringed city. The locust.
Let me convince you.
Met the dark with learning.
Let's see.
But in the end, learnt his knowledge was wanting. The world began without knowledge, and without knowledge will it end.
And according to the white birch bow description, before its description was changed in a patch, it used to read,
"Oh,
the bow is a relic from the land of an old sorcerer who was swallowed by the abyss, and known for his role in the heroic tale of the Abyss Walker."
Okay.
The only possible character known for his role in the tale of the Abyss Walker who could possibly be an old sorcerer is Manus, which lines up with the fact that his weapon is indeed a catalyst. Thus, Manus, who is called Primeval Man by Karth, is three things at once. Manus is he who met the dark with knowledge when the world began. Manus is an old sorcerer who was swallowed by the abyss. And Manus, most importantly, is Primeval Man, also known as a pygmy lord.
Well, I'll be damned, Vaati.
But we can only imagine it. It's a story of how a pygmy lord left the ringed city and settled in Oolacile, and eventually spread his abyss to the outside world.
Crazy, okay.
I'm going to quickfire a few other curiosities that I've found, and you can follow these up in the description. First, Ludleth may actually be a pygmy in the literal sense. This may well be something that the Japanese community has known for a long time, because the line, "I may be small, but I will die a colossus," more literally translates to, in Japanese, even this pygmy here was honored to become a lord.
Oh.
This raises interesting implications when you consider that Ludleth was exiled for the forbidden art of soul transposition, and consider also that Filianore's vagrant-like shell clearly contains a transposing kiln in the design works concept art.
Oh,
so could the ringed city in fact be Corland, and was Ludleth exiled from there? Reddit user Wespy has a great little thread that goes into more detail. And in a point raised by Marchi, who's one of our new resident translators, Ludleth being a pygmy around since the very dawn of the world certainly explains how he would have knowledge of the first Firekeeper, whoever she might have been.
Damn.
Because the eyes that we find in the untended graves are the eyes of the first Firekeeper, and Ludleth has dialogue about them, saying that they reveal a frightful betrayal, and that they reveal a light that was lost by all Firekeepers to come after this Firekeeper. I've read that some have put forward that Filianore was the first firekeeper, and I can see that. She is blind, she's presumably missing eyes, and like a firekeeper, she holds a darkness within her, because darkness seeps from where her eyes should be, and if Ludleth is indeed from here, then he should know of her, so that lines up pretty well. But all that said, I'm not completely convinced about that. I mean, the eyes are found on the corpse of another firekeeper, and while I suppose that they could be passed down from Filianore, should Filianore's eyes really reveal such a generic ending of the fire? The world we see in Filianore's future is more of an end of the world, not just the end of light. So, as you might have gathered, souls may well be over, but we're not done here. Also, before I go, I'm probably going to be in Japan by the time you see this video, which is amazing. So I'm actually going to do a little travel blog, or at least try to, about everywhere I've been, all the food I've eaten and all that sort of thing. So if you're interested into more of a window into my life, which I know is pretty sparse on this channel, then I'm just going to do this for patrons. So if you want to consider becoming one of them, you'd be doing that on behalf of everyone who watches my videos, and you get to see a little bit of what I'm going to be doing in Japan, if that's interesting to you. It'll give me something to do while the other side of my mind is like crying that I'm not making videos, and yeah, I kind of need to be creating something to make that anxiety go away. But thank you, regardless, and thank you for watching, and thank you for being the 1% listening at the end of the video, and I'll see you next time.
Beautiful. That was actually quite a neat video on Angel's Egg and Filianore, one that I didn't expect as well, especially how he goes out of his way to like link that to a whole other like media source, whereas like this is like, you know, from like a mid-80s like animation as well, which does have a lot of similarities. I think that was really neat. Also, the information surrounding Ludleth and potentially Corland was really interesting as well. I had no idea that there was a transposing kiln within the egg there as well, which sparks a lot of questions. But as always, when you get into Dark Souls lore, it's a lot of questions and not a lot of answers, but one hell of a lot of speculation. I'm actually really enjoying the DLC lore reactions with Vaati, because it's just all like a lovely big story time. So I'm not having any like big fancy wow reactions to a whole lot of stuff that's going on here. There's a lot of stuff that's definitely very interesting to take on and think about. But just listening here and sort of absorbing this information and taking it all in is nice, because I can't wait to eventually replay Dark Souls 3 with all of this information in mind, and then we can go through it and we can discuss it and play it together, which would be a lot of fun. But we're going to move into the final video of the Ringed City DLC, which is the minor characters of the Ringed City.
The Stone Humped Hag, the Angels, Silver Knight Ledo, Alva and Zullie, and the Merkmen. At the end of the world, much is explained, for characters are ripped here from all ages, all cycles, without too much regard for context. And some, like the Dragon Slayer armor, even came from our age, an age that ended long ago.
Yeah, the Dragon Slayer armor was super weird being in here.
Once, it was worn by a legendary Dragon Slayer, and it lost its
Moonlight Greatsword.
It retained the memory of the fights it had against the Archdragons, memories that were so potent, the armor itself, imbued with a soul admittedly, still remembered their sporting hunts. And left behind in Lothric, it came to be manipulated by the Pilgrim Butterflies, dark beings that may well be counterpoints to the angels that we'll get into later, who settled there as Lothric's age drew to a close. And now, deep in the abyssal swamp, the armor, it reads, was defeated by the champion of Ash in Lothric, and was left ages to rust, until it was possessed once again by the memory of the hunt. And why I start the video with this armor is because I really want to talk about how ages have passed. Remember when you placed the cinders and you were teleported to a ruined shrine? Everything and everyone here in the Dragheap, including Gael, including Lap, they might not have done these things,
Lap,
but they still made it to the very end of an era. And of course, a couple more minor characters made it here, though their stories have always been just below the surface.
One was a wayfaring knight on an endless, forbidden search. Only the abyss granted closure, if not reunion with his beloved.
Honestly, most of us probably only know Alva as that one red phantom who invades in Irithyll, but he's featured in 2 games now, and he has a story worth telling, although admittedly, this is a story that the game explicitly tells us for once. There's not much guesswork to be done here. So this is a tale of 3 characters: Alva, Saint Serata, and Zullie the Witch. Alva was a wayfaring knight who made it his quest to search.
So I remember the Alva set from Dark Souls 2.
Sickness. He fully dedicated himself to this cause, to the point where he eventually punished himself for his failures. His search would end up being quite famous, for many bards would eventually sing tales of his travels and, of course, his involvement with the witch. Zullie is the witch, someone referenced to employ heretical magical crafts, which are said to be widely misunderstood, forcing her to wear a veil when she travelled, rather than the pointed hat she would wear sometimes with a deep, unspoken sense of pride. Zullie heard of Alva's dedication to Saint Serata and decided to use all manner of tricks and deceit to ruin him. Perhaps she was trying to demonstrate the fragility of faith, or that dedication of man is ultimately a pointless thing. And so, her witchcraft assumedly played a part in this, but we also hear that she intended to seduce Alva. Zullie, however, never loved anyone, nor was she loved in return. But, as it turns out, in trying to seduce him and trying to make him fail, it's as if she accidentally found some admiration for the man. In the end, Alva would not find a cure for Saint Serata's sickness, and as a result, racked with guilt and remorse, he relinquished his knighthood. However, he and Zullie the Witch eventually both found their purpose in life in each other. Zullie, as unloving as she was unloved, became Alva's closest supporter, and Alva, despite failing his saint and his purpose, would accept the aid of the witch who once plotted against him. And that's the story in a nutshell. But one more thing, Alva is named Seeker of the Spurned in Dark Souls 3, which is an odd title, because to spurn something is to reject it with disdain, and the only real candidate for that in this story is Zullie, who was spurned as a witch. So if he's the Seeker of the Spurned, then at this point of the story, in Dark Souls 3, he must logically be seeking Zullie, and the implication, I think, is that they are finally reunited in the Ringed City.
Only the abyss granted closure, if not reunion with his beloved.
The implication in this quote, with Alva's invasion in front of Zullie's set as well, is that Alva was finally reunited with the witch in the city that was losing itself to the abyss. And, as we'll get into in the video about the locusts and the ringed knights, subscribe for that, perhaps the abyss is not so evil after all. But there's something else I want to talk about. It's that in Japanese, the word for spurned is pulled from imi, which is a noun with a significant degree of nuance. We have to thank Loremaster Noja for helping us out with this. Because the word imi, which they pulled the word spurned from, in Japanese means something more like a taboo, a shunned person, or, strangely, a purification rite. And obviously, searching for purification or absolution is very different to searching for a shunned person. And I thought it was weird that he was titled Seeker of the Spurned, which is why I brought this up, and I'm glad I learnt about the word imi, because its definitions, both Seeker of the Spurned and Seeker of Purification, both are definitions that fit with the story. Because at once, Alva is the Seeker of Zullie, the Shunned, and reunites with her in the Ringed City, But also, he is racked with guilt and remorse over failing to find a cure for Saint Serata, and as a result he could be searching for absolution and purification and release from his sin, which is a word that Imi implied. Zullie, on the other hand, appears to enter the service of the Judicator Giant, a character we'll talk about later, who enlists, by force or otherwise, the most powerful beings who come down here seeking the Dark Soul. One of these phantoms is Ledo of the Silver Knights, who invades us properly in a tower far above the Abyssal Swamp, swinging that great...
Yeah, right. I remember this fight. And then he's guarding a +3 ring, isn't he?
Discover that this giant rock would have made Havel proud.
That's true.
Its description says that Ledo was a travelling eccentric, someone who befriended both Havel, probably because they both loved rocks, and giants as well, which might explain why he's summoned by the Judicator Giant.
It's like, Havel, I got this giant rock hammer. Let's be friends. Yes.
This video.
Yes, Ledo.
When it was released early.
Rock friends.
Salim B comments that Ledo could have been the friend that imprisoned Havel the Rock in Dark Souls 1.
Betrayal.
Great theory, looking back. The Watchtower basement key tells us that there are rumors of a hero turned hollow who was locked away by a dear friend.
Oh wow.
Of course, this is a reference to Havel, but back then we
assumed it was Gwyn, right?
The friend who locked him away was most likely Gwyn, listed as Havel's old battlefield compatriot. He was the closest thing he had to a friend back then. But I think if we knew about Ledo, then we would certainly be more likely to ascribe this imprisonment to Ledo.
Yeah, wow.
Knight, rather than Gwyn, a lord.
That's pretty crazy.
Might have had more important things to do. What do you think? This theory gives a lot of character to Ledo, and one of the most significant things about Ledo, for me, is that he is our first mention of a Silver Knight with a name and a personality.
That's true, actually,
these
yeah.
faceless knights that are unquestionably loyal to Gwyn, Guinevere, and even empty cathedrals. This goes a long way to making this order seem more interesting, more human, and I might be less inclined from now on to see them as an army unit and more as individuals who were ultimately driven to serve the kingdom of Gwyn, but who also had agency to leave said kingdom and go on their own travels. The woman who sees all these travelers go by, seeking the ringed city, is the old Stone Humped Hag atop the drag heap.
Don't run off and die, love. It's a nicer view with you in it.
This old, stone-humped woman, according to her ashes, was once the wet nurse of royalty. So, our question is in two parts. A, why is a pilgrim of Londor here? And B, to whom was she a wet nurse of royalty? Well, in Dark Souls 3,
Murgo's wet nurse,
related to the Lothric royal family, whose wet nurses groomed the inheritors of the throne. But Vaati, you say, the drag heap is at the end of the world, and this woman could be the wet nurse of any royalty, right? And I thought so too, initially, until I looked more closely at the image for the old woman's ashes. As pointed out by Sanadis K in the last video, she wears the priestess ring upon her finger, confirming that she was in fact wet nurse to the kingdom of Lothric at some point. And considering knowledge of Prince Lorien's endeavours,
that Prince Lorien spoke of.
That's such a intimate detail. You have to look so closely at stuff to draw those conclusions.
But the question that's really important is, who is she now? Well, previously all signs pointed to every pilgrim being of Londor, which was a land devoted to the usurpation of fire, which is a goal that's in stark contrast to the fire-linking goals of Lothric, where this woman apparently came from. And I don't think who she was really matters, because if anyone were to leave their former life behind, it would be those of Londor, because this is a society that was comprised of undead who led quote-unquote unsavory lives. Their land has many references to absolving sin, and their very tone offers salvation to hollows, also conversely cursing all things living. This reminds me of the angels in more ways than one. And these angels seem exclusively born of the pilgrims, who are assumedly of Londor, which means that the angels now fly pretty much in the face of what we previously thought we knew about the angelic faith of Lothric. Assuming, of course, that these angels are indeed the angels.
These angels are so fascinating, though.
Started the angelic faith.
Because I thought they were,
so, I suppose,
linked or very similar to the pilgrim butterflies.
Which I recommend you watch, if only to understand why I'm taking some of those things back.
Wow, there you go.
In that video, I made the case for the angels being aligned with the linking of the fire, aligned with the way of white, and the old gods, and the old royalty, and I was citing the...
It's cool that we're watching them in order so we can see what he says when, and then updated information being able to change that.
It appears that the angels now undeniably appear from the pilgrims of Londor, who are against the linking of the fire, and instead want fire to weaken so that they can wrest it from its
Such an interesting and terrifying design of those angels.
Now is that we can finally recognize why the angelic faith was considered heresy in the kingdom of Lothric. If the angels are agents of Londor and a part of their usurpation of the flame, of course the traditional Lothric pillars would be opposed to the rise of this new faith. But Lothric eventually lost its devotion to the linking of the fire because of Prince Lothric, who was very content to watch his kingdom crumble and the Age of Fire end, and probably was not opposed to the rise of the angels at all. This theory probably still needs a little bit of work, so let's move on. Finally, if you're still here, let's finish on the Merkmen, who largely represent the law on the deep in the Ringed City. So, the Merkmen are described as being possessed by soul dregs which have a grave likeness to the human form. Now, we know that human dregs are the heaviest things in the human body, which sink to the lowest depths imaginable, and I wouldn't be surprised if the soul dregs here appeared in just that way, slowly sinking through the earth over the ages to accumulate here in the dreg heap. And while the deep doesn't get much more elucidation in the DLC, the abyss does, and the deep becomes far more significant because it is compared and contrasted to the abyss. So this video is getting far too long for minor characters, but I think the best possible thing I could leave you guys on is a video by another creator named Jerk Sans Frontieres, who makes this excellent case for the deep being a defilement of purity in line with many definitions in the Shinto religion. This theory of defilement lines up with the deep being comprised of stagnating souls, and I think it's worth showing you guys this because I know that this is the theory that's definitely affected a lot of my opinions on the deep, and it's gonna affect a lot of the theories going forward, so check it out. It really is like one of the best Souls videos out there, not just because of the mentions of the deep, so please watch it. But back to my stuff. In a day or two, I'll probably release the next video, which was going to be 10 more secrets in the Ringed City, but now it's going to be titled 20 more secrets in the Ringed City because we found out so much. And I think that now, about a week after release, most of you guys have played it, so after the next video, we'll dive right into explaining the entire story. The next video is probably already out for patrons who get a bit of early access, but regardless of whether you're a patron or not, thank you for watching. Check out the other videos, and I'll see you next time.
Cool. So there's more Ringed City specific and related videos that are secrets related, which is cool. So I think that might give us some more information on some other things. I am a little pressed for time today, unfortunately. I'm actually going to be I need to pack my stuff up and head out and pack my bags to go and fly to visit my family for Christmas. So I am pushed for time, so I will definitely have to come back and revisit Vaati's lore reactions for like secrets within the Ringed City. I believe that there must be more about like other characters and other things in the Ringed City DLC as well, perhaps even Ariandel and other things. I do have like the full complete playlist of like Soulsborne lore, which I've been going through in order, but perhaps there are some videos that are not in that playlist. So if there's anything that you think that I might have missed or are related to these DLCs from Vaati as well, please do recommend those, and I'll definitely compile those, put them together, and do a reaction of the ones that I feel like I can go through with you guys. I hope you've enjoyed my reaction to this collection of Ring City DLC videos for now, but it seems like there is certainly more for us to react to at a later point. So thank you so much for watching Storytime with Vaati, pretty much. I can't wait to learn more, as always, as we push through lore reactions and finally get some more out for you, and then we'll get to Bloodborne lore reactions from Vaati as well, but we're also going to be looking at Bloodborne lore reactions from some other creators as well, so recommendations and links and stuff like that are recommended as well. I do have comments that leave links automatically, they automatically get like almost like deleted. They get put in like a review section because YouTube spam comments are insane and everywhere, and it's just filled with so much spam comments putting links to everywhere. So I have them disabled across the board. So maybe instead of like putting links in your comments, just at least like as long as you put the video titles, I'll be able to search it, I'll be able to look it up. It should be all good. If not, join my Discord please, and let's have some great discussions in there. I have a very active Souls community in my Discord. We talk about a bunch of stuff, so you can leave video suggestions in there as well. But for now, for the meantime, I hope you guys are having a good Christmas and holiday season. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.